President Trump's longtime personal attorney, Michael Cohen, is breaking his silence for the first time. In a new interview, the man who once said he would take a bullet for the president now says, quote, "To be crystal clear, my wife, my daughter, and my son and this country have my first loyalty." Now, this is the first time we've heard from Cohen since the FBI raided his office and homes back in April. Prosecutors in New York's Southern District are investigating Cohen for alleged election law violations. Now, keep in mind, he has not been charged with any crime. For more on this, I want to bring in CBS News Washington correspondent Paula Reid. She's with me now from the White House. Now, Paula, in a series of tweets back in April, the president wrote, quote, "Most people will flip if the government lets them out of trouble. Sorry, I don't see Michael doing that despite the horrible witch hunt and the dishonest media." What do Cohen's comments indicate to you about his willingness to cooperate with the special counsel and federal prosecutors in New York?
Well, here he's saying the same thing that we've been reporting for weeks after talking to people close to him, which is that when it comes to his decision about whether or not to cooperate with federal investigators, it all comes down to his family and any time that he could potentially spend in jail away from his family. He's, of course, famous for being the president's longtime fixer. He's known for his loyalty to the president, as you referenced in the intro there. But now that he is under federal criminal investigation for his own possible financial crimes, he has to make a decision about whether or not he wants to share what he knows about the president and his inner circle in exchange for leniency in his own case, or whether or not he wants to fight any possible charges that are filed against him and hope for a presidential pardon. Now, I've talked to several sources close to Mr. Cohen, and they have told me that he does expect to be charged, but it's going to be determined by what he is charged with and how well his family is going to be able to endure a trial, both financially and emotionally. It'll all be up to his family as to whether or not he will cooperate. It's no longer about his loyalty to the president. It's about what, if any, time he is willing to spend apart from his family if he's convicted.
Follow-up question, is this interview just one of those signals that he's giving to the administration that things are changing?
Yeah, it does appear sort of unusual. There's been nothing that's happened just now in the case. Obviously, it was an off-camera interview, but there are pictures of him. He's talking to a very high-profile anchor. It was an unusual move. It certainly does seem to be a signal, but the question is, what is he signaling? Is he signaling to Mueller and America that, yes, I want to cooperate? Or is he trying to send a smoke signal to the White House saying, hey, I need a pardon? Because he can technically be preemptively pardoned in addition to being pardoned after a case goes forward.
And Paula, lawyers need lawyers sometimes. Michael Cohen also has retained new counsel that was ending a joint defense agreement that Cohen shared with the president. Explain the significance of that.
So we shouldn't read too much into this. The fact is he was using a lawyer here in Washington to help him go through all those thousands of documents that the FBI obtained when they surprised him with the search warrants at his home, apartment, and office. So he really needed someone who works in New York. And I'm told by sources close to him that he wanted someone who had relationships with the federal prosecutors there at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District. That's why he hired a new lawyer. But the fact that, as you noted, this sort of takes him out of the joint defense agreement that he previously entered into, that's not a good sign for the White House, because it shows right now he's looking out for his own interests and he wants someone who has the relationships in the building, and that usually tends to help you more when you're trying to negotiate a plea deal as opposed to a trial. He's
been in lockstep with the president in the past, but he broke rank saying, quote, he disagrees with the term witch hunt as well as those who vilify the FBI. Why would he do this now? Legally, what do you possibly see in his future?
Well, if you're under criminal federal investigation, the last thing you want to do is speak ill of federal investigators, right? That's only going to dig the hole deeper. The president takes a different approach, but as a recovering lawyer, I can tell you he's doing the right thing here. He's not engaging in attacks on the special counsel or in federal law enforcement generally, and that is absolutely 100% what you want to do when you yourself are under federal criminal investigation.
And let me switch gears here, Paula, to new developments on North Korea. National Security Advisor John Bolton spoke to Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan yesterday. He claimed that the North could be totally denuclearized in a year. Let's play some of that sound.
We have developed a program. I'm sure that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will be discussing this with the North Koreans in the near future about really how to dismantle all of their WMD and ballistic missile programs in a year. If they have the strategic decision already made to do that and they're cooperative, we can move very quickly. And it's to North Korea's advantage to see these programs dismantled very quickly, because then the elimination of sanctions, aid by South Korea and Japan and others can all begin to flow. We can get, physically, we would be able to dismantle the overwhelming bulk of their programs within a year.
1 year, is that realistic?
Well, the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, he says it's more likely going to be 2.5 years. But clearly, Omar, Pyongyang and Washington, they don't have all the details hammered out about exactly how North Korea is going to denuclearize. And a time frame is one of these details where clearly there's this enormous range in terms of what is actually possible. The ambassador also said specifically he believes that whatever is negotiated, North Korea must commit to fully disclosing all of its nuclear programs and also its ballistic missile test sites. That's something it hasn't done yet. So I think intelligent minds at this point can disagree about how long it takes to carry out a plan that hasn't actually been outlined yet.
There's that old saying in Washington, trust but verify. But there's also some new satellite imagery that appears to show North Korea working on a key ballistic missile site. And there's reports that U.S. intelligence agents believe that Pyongyang has increased its production of enriched uranium in recent months. Is the administration's plan already starting to fall apart in front of our eyes?
Well, let's put this in context. First of all, the satellite images, those were taken around the same time as the meeting in Singapore, and those show an expansion of a missile manufacturing site capable of producing missiles that could hit, U.S. installations in Asia. And this was all being finished, again, around the same time as the meeting in Singapore. Now, some experts have suggested that this signals a little bit of North Korea's intention in this whole thing, and that they are truly committed to their ballistic missile program. Now, in terms of that report you referenced, about potentially U.S. intelligence believing that North Korea will try to conceal some of their nuclear activity. Well, so far, the administration has not commented on that. Bolton tried to tamp that down, again, sort of circling back to the idea that they have a plan, even though the details haven't been hammered out. And he believes that that plan will result in the successful denuclearization of North Korea. And as I noted before, he said one of the requirements of any plan that is eventually negotiated is that they have to fully disclose all of their nuclear programs.
And we're going to run you through the gauntlet here, Paula. We're following an Axios report about the Trump administration's plan to basically blow up the World Trade Organization. What can you tell us about that?
Well, as we know, the president is no fan of the WTO. He's been very critical of that organization. Specifically, he believes that China takes advantage of that organization, has an unfair advantage. We did ask for sources about these reports when they first broke late last week. The Treasury Secretary, he came out and he said, look, the president does not like the WTO. He has serious issues with how China is operating. But at this point, he is not going to dismantle the WTO. But of course, upcoming meetings with our NATO partners, this adds a further layer of complexity and complication, perhaps making many of our NATO allies a little bit nervous if the president is willing to blow up the WTO.
Paula Reid at the White House, thank you. And we'll see you here, Paula, tomorrow morning, and you'll join me as a co-anchor. Until then, thank you.
Thank you.